We'll start with the ARCA Menards Series and familiar result sheet here. Another 18 and 28 Gibbs Pinnacle 1-2 finish. It wasn't William Sawalich this week. He's almost 18 years old, but not quite eligible yet to compete at the Kansas Speedways of the world. So Tanner Gray ended up picking up the win rather. We'll get into how he did it. A little bit of drama there at the end, and he better be thankful the final lap came when it did, and we'll tell you why a little bit later. But I want to start by going on to the second page of results here and starting at the back of the grid. I've got an Isabella Robusto article to write this week. I'm not too happy about that. I was really hoping for a better result for her. She sat on the pole in her first non-short track ARCA start here, showed great speed in qualifying. Unfortunately, however, her race was over pretty much just as it was beginning. She ended up getting loose coming out of turn 4 in the opening lap, had fallen back several positions, and then unfortunately wasn't quite clear when she moved up the track to try to salvage as much as she could before starting her second lap. Ended up in the wall, and that was the end of her day. But Brandon, again, I think you can't let a 28th place result be entirely indicative of how her weekend went. Obviously, she shouldn't have cleared herself, and that's something that she's going to have to learn with time as she continues to run more of these styles of tracks. But from a speed perspective, from a talent perspective, I think you can't deny at this point that it's certainly there when it comes to Isabella Robusto.
No, it absolutely is there. We've seen enough this year to merit that, and yeah, it is a shame to not see what she'd be capable of with just not too many races left on the calendar left this year, and coming into Kansas out or finishing last, but after the lap 2 crash, it really just took it out for her. So a lot of potential that we weren't able to see. I'm sure she's been having a really great year so far.
Yeah, and like I've said on this show and the Women in Motorsports show, and we'll have more on her evening. Kansas, maybe later this week. We'll see if we can get an episode of that in. We did have several female drivers competing this weekend, including Jennifer Jo Cobb back in the Truck Series. Good to see her back out there. But again, just a really unfortunate situation. But like I've been saying, I would like to see her full time next year. I think she has certainly gone out and earned that opportunity given her results and her pace. And it's, again, unfortunate that she couldn't come away with at least maybe not a win. Obviously, I think the 18 and 28 again, despite all the shenanigans at the end, which we'll get into here in just a moment, still the class of the field. Probably would have been hard to beat them over the course of 100 laps. But regardless, like I said, you can't deny that the speed is there, talent is there, and hopefully she gets an opportunity to show that much more often on a full-time basis in 2025. Now, her Venturini teammate, Amber Balkin, made things interesting there at the end. Fortunately for her, I know she's had a rough stretch of races here, especially at Bristol. And again, the controversy with Logan Misaraka, like we talked about the other week. But Balkin recovered to finish sixth, tying a career best for the Venturini driver there. So a solid run for her. And she restarted with 3 laps to go in the lead because she had stayed out on older tires. A little bit of a controversial situation there. Obviously, Balkin had the right to do that, but it reminds me of when Cole Witt stayed out at that Homestead race and what was clearly an underpowered car on old tires and kind of impacting how that final restart shook up there. So maybe a little bit controversy in terms of why the decision was made there. I don't think it would have been realistic to expect Balkin to hang on for 3 whole laps to win the race, and she of course ultimately faded to the last car, one of the last cars in the lead lap there with Andy J and what happened to him at the end. But still good to see her back out there with a lead lap finish and a strong result nonetheless. But on the restart, this is where the controversy comes in. Like I mentioned, she, of course, spun the tires, as I think, and again, not really faulting her there. I think that was to be expected given the position that she was in. At least didn't get as good of a restart as those behind her and ended up kind of getting tapped from behind and into Tanner Gray's left rear tire. And Jamie Little in the booth saw that there was tire smoke on the final laps there. Wasn't sure if his tire was going to last to the end, and it did. And we thought, well, it must have cleared itself, and it looks like the smoke's disappeared, so everything seemed to be fine. And then we saw the camera pan to him in turn 1 after a checkered flag, and his tire was completely gone, completely flat. So had the race gone on, not even one more lap, really just one more corner or one more half straightaway, we would have been talking about probably another Connor Zilic victory. But Brandon, in all the chaos of how that final restart ended up, first of all, I guess we can't probably say we're too surprised that it was another 18-28 1-2 finish, given how many of those we've had this year. But are you surprised for Tanner Gray in particular that his tire ended up lasting to the end until literally the last possible moment it was needed before it finally let go.
I am. That was amazing for it to last that long. I mean, ARCA and tires lasting, that those two things don't really go together too much. So yeah, very surprised that he was able to hold on to it. I guess Kansas gives you sort of not as abrasive as it could possibly be. So I guess yeah, a little bit of advantage there, but also just I guess some good tire management helped him hold on. But really, it could just be a lap later, and we'd be talking about a very different story. And also, not only was his tires starting to smoke, Connor Zilic, if he had another half a track to catch up to him, he was gaining on him there in the final lap. I really think he would have caught him had it been one lap to go instead of the final lap.
Yeah, of course, another great weekend for Connor Zilic as well, and we'll get into his Xfinity run here later on in the show. But again, not too much you can really say beyond how they got there with the finish, because of course we've seen those two cars just be the class of the field all year, really no matter who's been driving them. And of course, Tanner Gray picking up another win here has to feel good, especially after what happened to him in the spring Kansas race here in the ARCA Menards Series. So congratulations to him. And I'm sure he's very thankful that the tire had enough air in it to make it as far as it did before it finally let go after he crossed the line and picked up a checkered flag. LeVar Scott finished third, and again, we'll go on to the second page with results here real quick. Not a great day for Andres Perez. He did get back out on track and salvage a 21st place finish, but he is still, I think, in a position where unless we get a massive car count when we go to Toledo here, I think all he'll have to do, again, is just take the green flag, and he will still be the champion. So he's thankful that he has his points buffer, I guess, to be able to afford a weekend like this. We'll talk about the playoff format here when we get into our truck and Xfinity recaps, but I guess this is the downside to a full season championship in the eyes of some, that it's not going to be as exciting in terms of a championship battle that goes down in the last race. But at the same time, I think when you look at the results this year of the full timers, again, we've been tracking this, first time in I think almost half a century that we're probably going to have a winless champion, not only a winless champion, but every full-time driver not being able to pick up a win this year with how the ARCA season has played out. Even with that, Andres Perez, I think, has been the closest of the full-timers and maybe should have won a couple of races by now if things go on slightly differently. So I think when you look at his full season performance, nobody's really going to argue that he deserves this championship. But I guess LeVar Scott can still go out and try to qualify and pole, lead every lap, and win the race, and then hope that Perez can't take the green flag or something crazy happens. I don't know. Venturini's going to have to enter like 15 cars, I think, for us to be able to have Perez in a position where he could lose that many points. I think it's pretty much all set and decided, but not a great result for him at Kansas. Fortunately for him, though, he was able to afford a mulligan like that. And then in fourth place, you see Corey Day there back in the second Pinnacle car, B82. A little bit of controversy with him at the end there as well. He ended up getting loose, sliding right up into Andy Jankowiak, who looked like he was taking the fight to Tanner Gray there in the closing laps. Like he maybe had a shot to shock the world and potentially pick up a win. Unfortunately, he ended up getting the worst of that, ended up getting put in the wall, only salvaged a seventh place finish out of it, and then went over to have a conversation with the young Hendrick development driver there at the end. Brandon, what did you make of this incident? Because for me, I thought that the move itself wasn't that bad. Obviously, I wish Corey Day hadn't gotten loose and taken Andy J out and put him in the wall, but it wasn't really the move that bothered me. It was the fact that he didn't really show any remorse in his post-race interview for what happened to somebody who's on a much smaller shoestring budget like Andy J is compared to somebody like Corey Day who has a Hendrick backing. What was your take on the incident?
Yeah, it's difficult to assess when it's like that because I mean Corey Day coming in from a different world of racing, so some things to learn about the car, I guess. Even though you super talented driver in many respects, but coming to a different, bigger body style car on a big asphalt mile and a half, it's a lot different. And also Andy Jankowiak on that small budget, it's a lot of moving pieces to decipher there. But I mean, yeah, you would want him to show some remorse, or at least some sort of apology there. That's what really bothers me is that he is not very sorry about it. But yeah, I mean the move itself, the getting loose up on the track like that, I can't really say much about. We see things like that all the time. It's just how a driver is going to respond to it is what we look for.
Yeah, and again, like you just mentioned, Corey Day, very young, only 18 years old still, just making his presence known here in the ARCA platform and the stock car platform. So again, it's something that I'm sure will come with time. But again, as Brayton Laster responded to that interview on X/Twitter, saying, "Well, this this isn't going to go very far in making a good first impression among your peers here." So. We'll see if that comes back to haunt him later this year or in any further starts that he has. Or maybe even next year. These race car drivers tend to have long memories here, so I guess it maybe gives Andy J a free pass to maybe race him a little bit more aggressively than he might have otherwise if he maybe had shown a little bit more remorse in their conversation or in his post-race interview after the fact. But unfortunate for him, I'm telling you, one of these days though, Andy J is gonna, if not win a race, at least come darn close to it because he has multiple occasions, even at these mile and a half where you would expect his equipment to be lacking compared to the Joe Gibbses and Venturini's and Pinnacles of the world. He's out there fighting just as hard as anybody else is and with a much smaller budget than most of those other teams have. So great to see him out there. And like he said, he's going to be back next year and hopefully can do more races in this series. And we'll see. Maybe he can even park it in victory lane one of these times. You never know.
He's one of the next best, that's for sure.
Yeah. And hey, I mean, Greg Van Alst won Daytona about a year and a half
Yep.
ago, right? So I mean, you just never know. It's why they run the races, right? Anything's possible.